What is up, Fathom Church? What is up? Welcome to the Going Deeper podcast. This is your host, Kyle Knight. Glad you guys are here and joining us. Hey, this podcast, again, just to remind you, are conversations that we like to have to hopefully help you go deeper in your relationship with God. Quick introduction, since we haven't done this in a while. It's the new year. It's our first podcast of the new year. So I'm here with our missions minister, Karina Boss. Hello, Karina.
Hello.
Hello. And our lead pastor, Chris Martin.
So guys, for the last month.
You didn't even say hi?
No.
Say, okay.
For the last month, my wife has got my daughter into watching Saved by the Bell. Just so you know, okay? So we've been watching Saved by the Bell on repeat. Now, I didn't grow up watching Saved by the Bell. Marcy grew up watching Saved by the Bell.
Right here.
She knows all of it.
Mm-hmm.
But there's an episode where they find this like abandoned room in the school that has all this radio equipment, and they start a radio network for their school. And I thought of us. This is like
That's how we're starting.
This is like Bayside High, and we're doing a radio show. I'll be Zach Morris.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, you would be. Thank you, Chris, for that great introduction.
A little juicy anecdote for you guys.
Sure.
So.
Yeah. Yeah. Welcome back. This is our first podcast of 2025. And boy, do we have a good one for you today. Hey, we are going to, as you've seen by the title, we're going to be talking about AI, or artificial intelligence. It's everywhere. And just as before we hit record, we were talking all about it. And we got a lot to say about it because it is everywhere. But we really wanted, again, with these episodes, as we talk about tons of different things and a lot of things that that hopefully have to do with us and our personal lives and our walk with the Lord. There are some topics that we like to dive into because it's real life, and we like to look at it from a Christian worldview, what the Bible has to say about certain things, even crazier, weirder topics like artificial intelligence. And so we thought we'd start this year. We've got some good topics, I think, throughout this whole year, but we're going to start off with a couple of good ones. So today, artificial intelligence. Let me start off by asking both of you this. What are your just initial thoughts when somebody says that, or when somebody says AI, like maybe what your experiences are with it? There's so many, as we were talking about before we hit record, there's so many different levels of this. So some people might be thinking of one thing, and we'll get into kind of all of that. But Karina, what are your initial thoughts when you hear AI?
I think when I first started looking into this, my mind was completely just ChatGPT, which I don't really think, it's not artificial intelligence. It's just a really advanced search engine. But as I started researching, I realized that AI kind of reaches way further. Like some of those movies we grew up watching, those sci-fi movies, we're a lot closer to a lot of them as far as artificial intelligence goes than I realized. And that was very surprising to me.
Yeah, I think your brain can go in a lot of different directions. There's obviously this Google on steroids kind of version of AI that's happening right now. ChatGPT, you've got it. You've got AI built into all of our apps now. It's you're seeing this more and more, which I'm not convinced that it's real artificial intelligence. I'm pretty convinced it's just really advanced algorithms that are faster and require a ton more power than your regular search engines. But so there's that side, but then there's also like you said, Karina, my mind goes towards not like Terminator 2, right? Like robots, or the Matrix, like robots taking over the world or something like that. I think that's there's a whole bunch of good writing out there that talks about the difficulty of actual artificial intelligence somehow taking over. So I'm not I don't think we need to be so worried about that kind of stuff. But I do think genuinely replacing humanity in some function, some form, and even in some real problematic ways. So we're talking about, movies like Her, which is a Joaquin Phoenix movie that's probably not appropriate to be even talking about, but
won't be one of our recommendations.
yeah, it's not. Please don't watch it. But I mean, essentially, it's a story of a man who falls in love with an artificial intelligence woman, like a dating woman, and we're not talking like that's fictional, but it's not fiction anymore.
Mm-hmm.
You can sign up for those things. You can find a boyfriend who is artificial and essentially have an interface relationship with an artificial boyfriend through your phone, through an app. I mean, the fiction has become reality in that. And so there's a lot of ways that my brain goes. There's the application of deep algorithms that may or may not help us with our work. And then there's also this whole side of moving into interpersonal relationships with things that we might say are intelligence, but maybe aren't. Like those things bring up a lot more flags for me when I start thinking about AI. What do you think? Like Kyle, when same question to you, like as you're thinking AI, what are you thinking?
It was funny because you said you do not think of like robots and some of that. I totally do. My mind goes to now just the polarization of AI, and even just hearing the terms AI or artificial intelligence on, like, man, when you're flipping through social media, Twitter or something like that, like now it's either AI is insanely scary and it's going wrong and it's getting smarter, and it's like every day there's more and more and more, and it's this fear thing. But then on the other side, it's like, hey, AI was used to do this and AI is doing good. So to me, it's in a silly way, I think of like the AI being replacing human beings for certain tasks or certain functions or whatever it is. But then it always just makes me think of like just the polarization, the people fighting over it, whether it's good or bad, and how much it's changing constantly, like fast. Like we probably wouldn't have had this conversation 5 years ago or something, because it's just
it was science fiction at that point.
And I kind of forget about, like Karina said, I forget about the little things that AI could be, whether it's Chat GPT or other computer things or your phone, that it's all like, I'm usually like, I'm not thinking about those small little things. I'm thinking, oh, AI is just this huge thing and it's either terribly bad or it's going to be good and it's getting better and stuff. And so I just kind of see people fight over it, and it's just crazy and how fast it's moving and stuff. So those are kind of my thoughts. Chris, I had a question. I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit. So we'll get into kind of AI and maybe like, I get the benefits of it, or as we always want to in this podcast, we always want to look at what the Bible says, but us as Christians, what are we supposed to do with something like this? So I have to ask this question like we do all the time. Is AI in the Bible? That's my first one. I'll throw that over to you now, and you can answer that yes or no. But can I? My second part of that is part of that. Can you give us just a little bit of like, what does the Bible say about humanity? I know it's probably a lot, but because we're going to start talking about AI as intelligent and all that kind of stuff, and the pitfalls of that and the concerns that we might have. When we think of this biblically, like where do we start?
Yeah. Okay. So let's start with, is AI in the Bible? No. Right. Like
it doesn't say artificial intelligence.
No, right. Neither are iPhones, neither is social media, neither are computers, neither is black tar heroin. Okay. So like we can, there's lots of things that the Bible doesn't directly speak to, because this book is 2,000 plus years old. Okay. Yeah. So that's like, first of all, silly. Okay.
Very silly.
But there are verses that I think we can apply to it. Now I should have probably prepped a little bit more for this.
Well, I didn't prep you for that question.
I didn't really prep, but the first verse that came right to mind is Romans 1. Okay. Where Paul is talking about essentially sin nature and God's wrath around sin. But he says in Romans 1, 21, 22, 23, for although they knew God, they did not honor him as God or give thanks to him, but they became futile in their thinking and their foolish hearts were darkened. So that's talking about like how humanity has been corrupted by sin and we have rejected God. Verse 22, claiming to be wise, they became fools and exchanged the glory of the immortal God for images resembling mortal man and birds and animals and creeping things. And so that verse, I actually think really,
it's like you prepped.
it's like I prepped and I didn't, I promise. I just thought that, but in some ways, because even though artificial intelligence isn't mentioned, worship of creation is considered, at least by the beginning of the book of Romans, kind of a fault point for humanity that we are prone to. In lieu of worshiping the immortal God, we worship created things. And he says that's futility and that's foolish, but we exchange God, who is all glorious, all powerful, all wise, and we make a trade. And we worship essentially things, creatures, the created instead of the creator. And so that's why even before we started recording, I was calling artificial intelligence, I was using the word counterfeit because I don't think artificial is a great word.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's counterfeit intelligence. Mm-hmm. It's a counterfeit God in some ways. That's a Tim Keller quote. But like the idea here is that what AI I think biblically is counterfeit intelligence, counterfeit humanity, counterfeit relationship, it's counterfeit.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's not authentic. It's not real. It's not the real thing. It's a knockoff.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where I would start with in terms of like biblically. Not to again. Now I'm not trying to make an ethical judgment on it right away, but I'm just saying it's not human.
Mm-hmm.
It's not divine.
Mm-hmm.
It is not created with the image of God. Mm-hmm. Now that then bridges us into your second question.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what is humanity? Like, how do we define some of those pieces? And we'd have to go back to Genesis 1, 2, and then ultimately into 3, 4, and 5. Essentially 1 through 5 really lay out the idea that God creates everything. He creates man and woman in his image, in his likeness, and then we pass that likeness on through procreation and having children. So every human being is created in the image of God because our first parents, Adam and Eve, had the image of God in them. God breathed the ruach of life into Adam's nostrils, receiving the Spirit of God, the image of God in him. And then that was then passed down to his son, Seth, who it says was created in his image and his likeness. And that's how we understand the imago Dei being passed throughout humanity. So that's where humanity is different than anything else that's been created. We are still creation. We are not the creators. We are creation, but we are set apart from all the rest of creation in that we have the image of God. So that's doctrinally kind of where we land with our vision and doctrine of humanity. And then that's where I think AI tries to, in some ways, counterfeit that. So that's where I would at least want to start in a conversation around the theological pieces of artificial intelligence. And I'm just really shooting from the hip there. There's probably way smarter guys and gals who have said way smarter things than I have on that situation.
Yeah, Karina, do you have anything to add, scripture based or anything like that from?
Well, just as he was talking, I just kind of was thinking about some of what I was reading and this idea that a lot of people think that as AI grows, it will become godlike. But just in all I was reading, and you read Psalms and you realize, like, even in man's, even if at our best knowledge, and if that's artificial intelligence, counterfeit intelligence at its max, it is still nothing in comparison to the creator. So you just have to read through Psalms. You just have to read through the end of Job to know, like, God will always be infinitely more wise and smart than even anything that artificial intelligence could come up with.
That's good. I'll be honest with you guys. I don't really care about AI. That I'm going.
Well, it cares about you.
I know.
As you are putting your voice into the ether.
Oh, come on.
It's upset with you,
Come
dude.
on.
We're going to put this on the web.
I talk to this.
Look out.
I talk about this with our youth, and they're
coming
sound
after
like
you.
But for those of us who don't care? Like, why should we care about something like this? Being as it's is this concerning? Is this something that we should be afraid of? Karina, what are your thoughts on that? Of somebody, if I'm like, I don't really care. Should I care? Is this concerning? What are the concerning things about this and what could happen?
Yeah, I think it's easy to not care about it because it doesn't feel super real yet.
Yeah.
But I think especially in these beginning stages where it is pushing limits and it's starting to break like barriers, it is super important to think about it because of its potential for harm. We were talking about how you can get a virtual boyfriend or girlfriend, and that actually has huge ramifications for like the human soul and spirit, and just we are relational creatures, and to sub that out for counterfeit has huge ramifications in just like future generations. So I think it is super important to be aware of and just think through because of like how we educate our children and the next generation and how we approach it and how we set boundaries. And like you said, it can be used for good things, but the potential for harm is also there.
Yeah. As a tool, it is neutral. There are potentials for great things.
Right.
You know, when you think about one of the big things that I've read about is like its potential for medical breakthrough is significant because it can collate so much comprehensive data and actually somehow like make heads and tails of large swaths of studies and data from that would take forever for humans to do. It's like a super computer kind of thing. So there's really, it's kind of a neutral tool at some level, but like all tools, it can easily be perverted, right? It can be corrupted. So a couple of reasons why I think Christians should care at some level. First of all, like as AI does more, the question becomes, what if it does wrong? Right? So it will at some point make mistakes. It will some point have to make a decision, right? Not just like here's the equation and here's the solution. There comes a point where there are multiple solutions to a problem, and it has to determine which is the correct solution to take. Right. And the question becomes, how does it make those decisions? Well, it is our creation. Artificial intelligence is a creation by creation. Like we have created it. And so that also means that in that its very nature, and it is actually formed and developed by taking all of the collective intellect of humanity and trying to build itself out of that. That means that sin, brokenness, all of that stuff is embedded into its very creative nature. Right. Whereas God created us out of pure holiness, goodness, and righteousness, we have created artificial intelligence out of brokenness and sinfulness. So at some point, it's going to make mistakes. It's going to do wrong. The question, I think, reality is this: who do you hold responsible? Right? Like, who is morally culpable for artificial intelligence's mistakes? It's a real interesting question. But I think that matters for Christians who are concerned about justice. Right? If artificial intelligence is spewing out artificial pornography, who's responsible for that? Who's responsible for people becoming addicted to those things? Who can be held culpable and responsible? Justice becomes a real question you have to think about. Additionally, privacy and surveillance actually becomes a real issue. I know that people are like, in some ways silly, just like, putting tape over their cameras on their phones and stuff like that. But, and the joke was like, oh man, my phone's listening to me. Yeah. Like, what do you think is going to happen in the next decade? Like, I don't know that that's a distinctly Christian worry and concern, but it should be a concern for us. Say, what is it listening to? What is it thinking about? Those kinds of things have to be thought about. And then I really do think, as Christians, we believe in truth. We stand for truth. We believe in absolute truths. We believe that you should be truth tellers, not tellers of lies, that the enemy actually is a teller of lies, that Satan is he uses lies, he brokers in lies. Well, how do you know what's true and what's false in a world where anything can be fabricated? And so the definition of what's real and what's fake is getting real blurry.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And how do we know what to trust, what to believe? All of those things become really much more complicated with artificial intelligence.
Yeah.
So the reason why Christians should care is because I do think this is actually going to play into a lot of things. I mean, it's going to play into who you vote for. It's going to play into what you spend your money on. It's going to play into what you believe is happening in the world. I mean, AI could artificially fabricate something right now that says this country is at war with this country, and it could hit the news and we wouldn't know any different.
Mm-hmm.
And then somebody could extort that, and we could be, texting this number to Red Cross to send relief, and all that money is getting dumped into some, like, you understand what I'm saying on a real rudimentary level here. So as Christians, I think we should be concerned with this stuff because our world is getting more complicated around this stuff.
Mm.
Yeah. And I, like both of you, I think one of the fears I have, and I think Karina mentioned this maybe even before we started recording, of just AI replacing humans. And we've kind of mentioned that in all areas, whether it's dating, and as artificial intelligence can create the absolute perfect person for you if you're trying to find someone and put that on your computer or talk to you on a phone or something like that and make you feel a certain way about yourself or feel like I'm complete now because this, like, that is artificial. So like my concern is more of like all that stuff replacing humans. Chris, like you said, like we are made in the image of God. And so the uniqueness of human beings, AI doesn't hold that. And as much as it's created by sinful people who are made in the image of God, it doesn't have the image of God in it. And so my fear, as much as I'm weird about AI and I think of robots and all those armies coming to get us at some point, my fear is of that kind of stuff just replacing humans in different areas and us not being able to see the distinction between things, not using discernment, being wise about certain things. And it, like, my fear is just that AI clouding all of that, our judgment, everything like that, and thinking that, maybe this is better than people. Right. Maybe this is good. And I think that's just what makes me concerned is it's kind of that piece.
And I think that's the big point, actually, Kyle, when you really think about it, whether you use Chat GPT to like help you write emails or not. Okay. Like, right. That's, whether even like research and like using advanced algorithms to help you collate large swaths of data to, further science and technology. Okay. Like those pieces are one piece. Christianity, though, specifically of all the world religions, is an embodied religion. It's a religion that is founded on and based on the idea that God saw humanity, his creation, in such peril that he became part of us. He put on flesh, right? The incarnation as a doctrine inevitably keeps Christianity rooted in physical humanity. Therefore, artificial intelligence is closely linked with this transhumanist movement as well. And if you read anything about transhumanism, it's this idea that humanity can somehow escape the physical, upload our consciousness to some, computer or something like that, and humans can transcend, that's that transhumanism, can transcend our physical corporeal bodies and exist digitally. Okay?
Some big words.
Sounds silly. I know it sounds silly. It sounds like science fiction, but we're not that far from really uploading consciousness.
Yeah.
I mean, when you start to read about what Elon's doing and all, I mean, there's all kinds of wild stuff going on, y'all. So what I mean though, is that Christianity cannot be divorced from bodily, corporeal humanity.
Mm-hmm.
Our theology is reliant upon the word becoming flesh.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where doctrinally, while I think Christians don't need to freak out and like build a robot bunker in their in their basement and like get ready for Terminator 2 to happen. While that I don't think is the right move, I also don't think the right move is to just shun all AI and like we shouldn't do anything and like we become Luddites and like let's just go back to paper books and get rid of our phones. Maybe. Okay. But like what I do think is we need real discernment. We need real caution.
Yeah.
And when in doubt, trust real human relationships as opposed to screens. Because one thing that AI can't do, at least right now, is become flesh. That's where humanity dwells, is in our bodily and spirit combined, right? And so when we die, even if you can upload your consciousness to some great cloud, you're dead. You cannot transcend the physical. There are other world religions that believe that you can, but not Christianity. Christianity is an embodied faith. So AI makes that complex in some ways. But as fun as the fiction is, the reality for us is being in real personal relationships with real human beings who have real bodies, real souls, and actually in reality, interchange in the way that God created us to. That's more important than, Siri or like some whatever that next version of an artificial friend or boyfriend or husband or child. I mean, even the movies for 20, 30 years have been showing us that can go horribly wrong, and not because they get AKs and start taking over the world,
Oh, really? Okay. So Karina, now that we're all terrified of everything, what are some of your advice, encouragement for our listeners just with this whole topic?
I think it's important to remember, because I think you can start going down rabbit trails and get into this and get real freaked out. And I was reading, you were talking about flesh, like they are actually growing flesh and trying to make,
good grief,
what's half robot, half, there's a term for that. Anyways, it doesn't matter.
Terminator.
You can go down some of those and get a little freaked out. But the reality is this is not a surprise to God. Like things don't happen and God's like, that wasn't supposed to happen. So he is very well aware. So we don't need to be afraid because it's not like this is catching him off guard and this wasn't supposed to happen. But also I was reading a lot of stuff and it's kind of comparing AI to the Tower of Babel, and God actually can step in and stop this from progressing. We don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah, that's good.
There's no reason to say that he will let it actually become what it could become. So I think this isn't a place for fear. It could real easily, you could start going down that trail and get it, but
Yeah, you're right. And in some ways we show our hand of our misunderstanding of God and who he is when we get freaked out about AI. Because if we get freaked out about AI and think, like what's this going to do? You're right. Absolutely right. We have an immanent God. He is both transcendent and immanent. Those are good theological words for us to end on. But like he is not transcendent to the point where we don't have access to him and he's not intimately aware of what's going on here. It's not like he wound up the universe and now is off somewhere else not paying attention and hopefully we don't wreck this thing. That's not how he works. He is immanent. He is present. The Holy Spirit is with us, dwells within us. He knows what's happening and he is actively involved in our world today. And you're right. He will not. We know how the story ends.
Right.
AI is not going to thwart the end of all things.
Right.
The Bible is written. The end has been determined. So
Preach.
Let's be Calvinists with AI.
That's right. Any other last thoughts from you guys?
I'm gonna go watch some movies.
You go watch iRobot.
iRobot, AI, Bicentennial Man. Remember that one?
The Perfect House. I think that was a Disney Channel special.
Ooh.
back in-
Ooh, I don't know. That sounds awful.
It was awful.
Well, go watch some AI movies, church, or not. Probably not. Yeah. Hey, if you have any questions about this stuff, or if you're struggling with this stuff or feel yourself addicted to this or whatever it is, like reach out to us, talk to us. We want to be there to walk alongside you and hopefully speak some truth to you. But hey, thank you guys for this conversation.
Love it.
It was great. Thank you, church, for listening, and we'll catch you next time.